Bryan's cheek burns from Gladys's vicious slap, the ballroom freezing in horror as elite guests pull out phones to capture the public shaming. Mistaking the billionaire investor for insignificant staff, Damien reinforces the attack with a mocking laugh, heightening the class divide. But when Bryan composes himself and strides away, what quiet command does he issue that instantly freezes billions and exposes their fatal arrogance? Before we begin, we'd love for you to hit that subscribe button. Your support fuels these stories and helps us bring you even more powerful narratives. Now let's dive in. You know that kind of night where crystal and silk hide something rotten underneath? That was the night Bryan Carmona walked into the Grandview Foundation gala. He wore a simple black tuxedo, well-tailored but unremarkable. Clean fade, modest watch, no rings. The kind of look that rich people's eyes slide right past because it doesn't demand their attention. He preferred it that way. Let them wonder. Chandeliers dripped light across white linen tablecloths. A live orchestra played Vivaldi, something elegant that nobody actually listened to. The air smelled like imported roses and aged bourbon. Phones were everywhere. Nobody wanted to miss proof they'd been in the room when history was made. On every screen near the stage, one name kept appearing in gold script: Vanguard Global Logistics. The pending $10 billion acquisition everyone whispered about. Staff gossiped in the coat room. Guests name-dropped like they'd brokered the deal themselves. The mystery investor backing it all. Still anonymous. Bryan moved through the crowd slowly, hands loose at his sides, eyes reading the room like a balance sheet. Security had already stopped him at the entrance. The guard looked him over twice and asked, "Catering staff entrance is around back, sir." Bryan had smiled and produced a black invitation with an embossed silver seal. The guard stepped aside, face flushed, but the damage lingered. Inside, the same energy followed him like a shadow. A couple in matching Rolex watches gave him a once-over, then shifted their champagne flutes to the far hand as if he might brush against them. A woman in emerald silk cut in front of him at the bar and said to her friend, just loud enough, "They really need to check credentials better." Bryan ordered sparkling water. No correction necessary. If tonight unfolded the way he expected, words wouldn't be required. At the far end of the ballroom, cameras swiveled toward the stage as the MC tapped the microphone. His voice boomed over the hum of wealth and ambition. "Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Vanguard Global Logistics Celebration Gala." Polite applause rippled through the crowd like a trained reflex. Bryan stayed near a marble column, close enough to observe, far enough to remain invisible. The MC grinned too wide. "Tonight, we honor a historic partnership. $10 billion. A deal that will reshape global supply chains and redefine market leadership." You could feel greed thicken in the air. Then she appeared. Gladys Halbert stepped onto the stage in a burgundy silk gown that caught every spotlight. She waved like royalty acknowledging subjects. Beside her stood her husband, Damien Halbert, in a pale blue suit pressed sharp enough to cut. He smiled with all teeth and no warmth. Everyone watched them. Everyone except the man who actually owned the firm signing that deal. "Bryan." Whispers started before Bryan even moved closer to the stage. People clocked him from across the room, nudging elbows and tilting heads like he'd wandered in through the service entrance. A server passed with a tray of champagne, and one guest leaned toward another. "I swear that guy keeps appearing where he doesn't belong." Her friend laughed under her breath. "Maybe he's networking." Bold strategy. Bryan ignored it. He eased through the crowd with measured steps. The carpet felt plush beneath polished shoes, thick enough to swallow sound. He watched the stage from a distance, jaw set, eyes calm. Gladys spotted him first. Her expression shifted, a slow, calculating smirk, like she'd found a target that didn't know it was prey. She whispered something to Damien, and his brows dropped into a frown. Damien stepped off the stage with forced charm and walked directly toward Bryan. His smile looked rehearsed. "Excuse me, sir. Are you supposed to be standing here?" He reached out and brushed Bryan's sleeve with 2 fingers, like he expected him to flinch. Bryan kept his voice even. "I'm fine where I am. Just observing." Damien chuckled, sharp, dismissive. "Observing. Right." He snapped his fingers at a passing server. "Can someone get this gentleman a towel? Looks like he's sweating through that off-the-rack suit." A few guests glanced over, pretending not to stare. One man muttered loud enough to carry. "Who cleared him for VIP? Staff entrance is on the south side." Gladys approached next, heels clicking in perfect rhythm against marble. She plucked a champagne flute from a tray without looking at the server holding it. Her eyes raked Bryan from head to toe. You know, sweetheart, if you needed work tonight, there's a sign-up sheet. Pretending to be a guest isn't the move. Bryan said nothing. His calm seemed to unsettle them more. Gladys stepped closer, voice dropping into something colder. Go make yourself useful. Table 6 needs refills. When Bryan didn't move, her jaw tightened. Damien stepped forward, positioning himself between Bryan and the crowd. His voice dropped lower, more dangerous. You're making people uncomfortable. I suggest you leave before security handles this differently. Bryan met his eyes. Steady, unflinching. I'm not the one making a scene. That was when Gladys's expression changed. The smirk vanished. Her hand rose slowly, deliberate, sharp. The slap landed clean across Bryan's face. The crack echoed over violins and champagne bubbles. Gasps rippled through the ballroom like shockwaves. Phones lifted instinctively. Someone whispered, "Oh my God, she actually hit him." Damien froze, eyes wide, then smirked, like power had just confirmed itself. Gladys's hand hovered in the air, fingers still trembling. She didn't look regretful. She looked victorious. Bryan didn't touch his face, didn't raise his voice. He adjusted his cuff, slowly, deliberately, and turned toward the exit. No words, no explanations, just silence following him like gravity. A server whispered as he passed. That man just walked out like he owns the place. Nobody believed it. Yet, the hallway outside the ballroom felt cooler, almost soundless after the chaos he'd left behind. Bryan moved with steady steps, fingertips brushing the edge of his jacket where the sting still lingered. He exhaled once, quiet, controlled, then reached into his pocket and pulled out his phone. The screen lit his face with a soft glow. He tapped one number. So how does a man worth $10 billion become the one person no one bothers to recognize? Before we continue, click subscribe, like this video and comment where you're watching from. Your support helps us bring more wonderful stories, and trust me, you won't want to miss them. Now let's get into the story. 3 hours earlier, the Grandview Foundation Gala was already in full swing. The orchestra had started at 7 sharp, violins weaving through laughter and the clink of crystal. Perfume hung thick in the air, expensive and deliberate. Conversations moved like transactions, polished and rehearsed. Everyone talked about money, but they called it impact and vision. Near the champagne fountain, a hedge fund manager bragged about his yacht. By the ice sculpture, a tech executive name-dropped senators. At table 4, someone whispered about the mystery investor everyone wanted to meet, the one bankrolling the Vanguard deal. $10 billion. Anonymous. Untouchable. That's when Bryan Carmona walked in. No security detail. No assistant trailing behind with a tablet. Just a man in a black tuxedo, moving through the crowd like he didn't need permission. The guard at the entrance had looked him up and down twice. Name and invitation, please. Bryan handed over the black card with the silver seal. The guard scanned it, frowned, scanned it again. This is VIP access. You're sure you're in the right section? Bryan smiled. I'm sure. Inside, the shift was immediate. A woman in diamonds stepped aside as he approached the bar, clutching her purse tighter. A man in a tailored suit glanced at him, then turned his back mid-conversation. No one said anything directly. They didn't have to. Bryan had built a fortune on being underestimated. He'd learned early that people reveal their true selves when they think you're irrelevant. Tonight wasn't about shaking hands or making speeches. It was about watching who smiled at power and who stepped on perceived weakness. He moved toward the edge of the room, positioning himself where he could see everything. That's when Gladys Halbert noticed him. She stood near the stage in her burgundy gown, whispering something to Damien. Her eyes lingered on Bryan, not with curiosity, but with dismissal. Damien followed her gaze and smirked. They'd already decided who he was. Bryan saw it clearly. Respect wasn't given to people. It was given to what people thought you had. And when they thought you had nothing, you became invisible. Or worse, a target. Gladys had spent 30 years learning how the world worked. You didn't ask for respect, you took it. You didn't wait for doors to open, you made sure people held them. Tonight, she was untouchable. Burgundy silk, diamond earrings that cost more than most people's cars, and a husband whose name opened boardrooms across 3 continents. She moved through the gala like royalty inspecting subjects. Then someone blocked her path. Bryan stood near a column, scanning the room, unaware she was approaching. Gladys stopped short, her heel catching slightly on the carpet. She waited. 1 second. 2. He didn't move. Her jaw tightened. People usually sensed her presence, stepped aside before she had to ask. This man didn't even glance her way. "Excuse me," she said, voice sharp enough to cut. Bryan turned calm. "Sorry. Didn't see you there." He shifted slightly but didn't rush. That pause, that half-second where he didn't scramble, ignited something in her. "Do you work here?" she asked, eyes narrowing. Bryan met her gaze. "No. Then maybe you should find somewhere else to stand. This area is reserved for donors. I'm fine where I am." Gladys's expression hardened. She wasn't used to being told no, especially not by someone who looked like him. People like you should know better than to wander where you don't belong. Damien appeared beside her, reading the tension instantly. He smiled, cold, amused. "Everything all right, darling?" "Just explaining the layout," Gladys said, not breaking eye contact with Bryan. Damien sized Bryan up and chuckled. "Ah, I see." He placed a hand on Gladys's back, a gesture of solidarity. "Honest mistake, I'm sure. But security's probably looking for you, buddy." A few guests nearby slowed their conversations, sensing drama. Bryan's silence wasn't submission. It was an assessment, but Gladys didn't see it that way. To her, silence from someone like him meant only one thing. He knew his place and was too afraid to challenge hers. Her hand twitched at her side. Anger mixed with entitlement, sharpened by the audience now watching. She didn't think. She just moved. Her hand rose before her conscience could catch up. The sound came first. A sharp crack that cut through Vivaldi and champagne bubbles, through polished laughter and the hum of wealth. Gladys's palm connected with Bryan's cheek, clean, deliberate, unforgiving. Time fractured. Bryan's head turned slightly from the impact. His jaw tightened. The sting spread across his face like fire beneath ice. But he didn't flinch, didn't stumble. His feet stayed planted on marble that suddenly felt like a stage. Inside, memories flickered. Other rooms, other assumptions, other moments when people mistook his calm for weakness, his silence for submission. He'd learned long ago that reacting gave them what they wanted, proof that they'd gotten under his skin. So he breathed. Slow, controlled. The ballroom held its breath with him. Gasps rippled outward like shockwaves. A woman's hand flew to her mouth. A man whispered, "Did she just?" Phones rose instinctively. Screens glowed. Fingers tapped record. This wasn't just a moment anymore. It was evidence. Content. A story people would retell. Damien stood frozen, eyes wide, mouth slightly open. For a split second, he could have said something, done something. Instead, he smirked, small, brief, satisfied. Like justice had been served. Gladys's hand still hovered in the air, trembling slightly. She didn't look regretful. She looked justified. "Maybe now you'll remember where you stand," she said, voice cold and certain. The crowd waited, watching, waiting to see if Bryan would explode, if he'd shout, if he'd give them the spectacle they were already recording. Bryan adjusted his cuff. Slow, deliberate. Then he looked Gladys directly in the eyes. "You just made a choice," he said quietly. "Live with it." His voice didn't shake, didn't rise. It simply existed, steady, final, devastating in its calm. Then he turned and walked toward the exit. No shouting, no threats. Just the sound of his footsteps against marble, measured and unhurried, like a man who knew exactly where he was going. The room exhaled behind him, nervous, uncertain whispers filling the space he left. But the damage? That was already done. And it was only just beginning. The hallway outside the ballroom felt like another world. Quiet. Cool. The thick carpet swallowed sound. Behind him, muffled laughter and music continued like nothing had happened. Bryan stopped near a window overlooking the city lights. He reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out his phone. The screen cast a pale glow across his face. He scrolled through contacts. Found the name he needed. Press call. 2 rings. Bryan. The voice on the other end was steady, professional. Marcus. Bryan's tone was calm, almost conversational. Suspend all capital flows tied to the Vanguard acquisition. A pause. All of them. Effective immediately. Bryan, that's. I know what it is. His voice didn't rise. It didn't need to. Execute it now. I'll send confirmation in writing within the hour. Understood. Bryan ended the call. Slipped the phone back into his pocket. Exhaled slowly. What Gladys and Damien didn't know, what no one in that ballroom knew. was that Bryan Carmona wasn't some confused guest who'd wandered into the wrong section. He was the sole owner of Carmona Capital, a private equity firm with over $10 billion in managed assets. He'd personally structured the financing for the Vanguard global logistics deal. Every dollar, every term, every signature line. He hadn't come to the gala to network or celebrate. He'd come to observe, to see how people behaved when they thought no one important was watching. Character revealed itself in those moments, in how someone treated a server, spoke to security, or handled a person they assumed had no power. Gladys and Damien had just shown him everything he needed to know. This wasn't revenge. Revenge was emotional, reactive, temporary. This was assessment, a business decision based on evidence gathered in real time. Bryan turned toward the exit, footsteps echoing softly down the empty corridor. Behind him, the gala continued. Champagne still flowed. The orchestra still played. Guests still laughed and posed for photos. But beneath the surface, systems were already shifting. Approvals vanishing. Transfers freezing. Contracts stalling. The consequences were moving faster than anyone inside realized. And by the time they did, it would already be too late. Inside the ballroom, the first sign came from the screens. The Vanguard logo that had been spinning in gold across every monitor flickered once, twice, then froze mid-rotation. A technician near the stage frowned, tapping frantically at a tablet. Another staff member whispered into a headset, voice urgent but controlled. Then the orchestra stopped. Not a planned pause, a jarring, mid-phrase halt. The conductor lowered his baton slowly, confusion creasing his face as someone whispered in his ear. Conversations faltered. Guests looked around, sensing something wrong but unable to name it. The MC returned to the microphone, smile tight, professional mask slipping. Ladies and gentlemen, we're experiencing some technical difficulties. Please bear with us for just a moment. But it wasn't technical difficulties. Near the back of the room, a foundation board member's phone lit up. Then another. And another. Executives pulled devices from pockets and purses, faces shifting from confusion to alarm. Damien's phone vibrated. Once. Twice. Then it didn't stop. He glanced at the screen. 7 missed calls. 12 new messages. All from the same financial contact. He opened the first message. Asterisk deals frozen. All transfers suspended. What the hell happened? Asterisk. His stomach dropped. Gladys noticed his expression change. What's wrong? Damien didn't answer. He was already dialing, phone pressed to his ear, walking quickly toward the edge of the ballroom. The call went to voicemail. He tried another number. Same result. An announcement crackled over the speakers. We regret to inform you that due to unforeseen financial complications, tonight's gala will be concluding earlier than planned. We apologize for any inconvenience. The room erupted in confused murmurs. Donors grabbed their coats. Investors huddled in tight circles, phones glowing, voices rising. Staff moved through the crowd with forced smiles and hollow reassurances. Gladys stood frozen near the stage, champagne glass still in hand. The confidence that had armored her all evening cracked. She scanned the room, searching for answers no one had. Damien returned, face pale. It's the funding. Everything's been pulled. Pulled. By who? He didn't know. No one did. But somewhere outside those gilded walls, the man they'd humiliated had already walked away. And with him went everything they'd assumed was untouchable. The board member's voice cut through the chaos like a blade. It's Bryan Carmona. 3 words, spoken quietly near the bar. But they detonated across the ballroom faster than any announcement could. Heads turned. Conversations stopped mid-sentence. Who? Bryan Carmona. He owns Carmona Capital. He's the investor. Silence spread like spilled wine. Someone pulled out their phone, fingers flying across the screen. Seconds later, their face went white. Oh my God. He's worth over $10 billion. He structured the entire Vanguard deal. The information rippled outward. Whispers became gasps. Gasps became frantic searches. Screens glowed as guests pulled up articles, LinkedIn profiles, Forbes lists. Then someone found the video. The slap, recorded from 3 different angles, already circulating in private group chats. A woman in sequins held up her phone, volume loud enough for others to hear. The crack of Gladys's palm. Bryan's calm adjustment of his cuff. His quiet exit. That was him, someone whispered. The man she. Yeah. Damien stood frozen near the champagne fountain, phone hanging limp in his hand. The messages kept coming, each one worse than the last. Are you insane? Do you know what you've done? Your name's already circulating. No one's going to touch you. Career ending didn't begin to cover it. His reputation, built on carefully managed relationships and calculated alliances, was disintegrating in real time. Investors he'd courted for years were already distancing themselves. His inbox filled with canceled meetings, withdrawn offers, polite but final rejections. Gladys found him, her face drained of color. "Damien, people are saying." "I know what they're saying." Her hands trembled. The righteous certainty she'd worn like armor was gone, replaced by something raw and desperate. "We didn't know. How were we supposed to know?" But that was the point, wasn't it? They hadn't needed to know. They should have treated him with basic respect regardless. Across the ballroom, phones lit up with the same video. The slap played on loop, but now everyone knew the price tag. $10 billion. And the cost of one moment of entitlement? Everything. They found him outside, near the valet stand where black cars idled in neat rows. "Bryan, wait please." Gladys's heels clicked frantically against the pavement. Damien followed close behind, tie loosened, face flushed from panic, and the sprint through the lobby. Bryan stopped, turned slowly. His expression was neutral, unreadable. Gladys reached him first, breathless. "We didn't know. I swear, we had no idea who you were." Damien stepped forward, hands raised like he was approaching something fragile. "This is a massive misunderstanding. If we'd known, if anyone had told us, we never would have." "Never would have what?" Bryan's voice was quiet. Steady. Gladys's words tumbled out faster now. "Spoken to you that way. Treated you like, look, I made a mistake. A terrible mistake. But it wasn't personal. It was just, tensions were high, and I thought." "You thought I didn't matter," Bryan finished. Silence. Damien tried again, desperation sharpening his tone. "We're prepared to make this right. Whatever it takes. Public apology. Charitable donation in your name. Anything." Bryan studied them both. Not with anger. Not with satisfaction. Just with the same calm assessment he'd worn all evening. "You think this is about the slap," he said finally. Gladys blinked. "Isn't it?" "No." Bryan's gaze moved between them. "The slap was just the moment everything became visible. What I saw tonight wasn't a mistake or bad judgment under pressure. It was who you are when you think no one important is watching." Damien opened his mouth, but no words came. Bryan continued, voice even. "You didn't pull the deal because you hit me. I pulled it because you showed me exactly how you'd treat partners, employees, anyone you perceive as beneath you the moment things get difficult." Gladys's face crumpled. "Please. We can change." "We can." Bryan shook his head. "Not cruelly. Just finally. I hope you do." He turned and walked toward a waiting car. No backward glance. No dramatic exit line. Just a man unburdened by the need to prove anything to people who'd already shown him everything. The door closed softly behind him, and the night swallowed their apologies whole. By morning, the video had gone viral. Not just in business circles, everywhere. The slap, the calm exit, the $10 billion revelation. News outlets picked it up. Social media dissected every frame. Think pieces appeared analyzing class, race, and the dangers of assumption. The Grandview Foundation issued a formal statement distancing themselves from the incident. The gala sponsors quietly withdrew their names from future events. Vanguard Global Logistics released a brief comment acknowledging the unfortunate conclusion of merger discussions, without naming anyone directly. But everyone knew. Gladys and Damien's names became cautionary tales whispered in boardrooms and country clubs. Invitations stopped arriving. Calls went unreturned. Damien's firm asked for his resignation. To pursue other opportunities, the press release claimed. Gladys found herself seated at tables farther from the center, then not invited at all. Social exile wasn't loud. It was silent. Doors closing one by one until you realized you were standing outside alone. Meanwhile, Carmona Capital redirected its resources. The $10 billion earmarked for Vanguard went elsewhere, to a logistics startup in Atlanta led by a woman who'd worked her way up from warehouse management, to a supply chain innovation firm in Detroit that prioritized worker equity, to companies that understood character mattered as much as quarterly returns. Bryan didn't give interviews about the incident, didn't write op-eds or make public statements. He simply continued building, investing, and observing. because he'd learned long ago that true power wasn't about being recognized in a room. It was about knowing who you were when no one was watching. It was about responding with precision, not emotion. About walking away from what didn't deserve your energy and investing in what did. The slap had lasted 1 second. The video replayed millions of times. But the real lesson wasn't in the moment of humiliation. It was in what came after. How Bryan chose silence over spectacle, dignity over revenge, assessment over anger, and how that choice reshaped everything. Because true power doesn't announce itself in chandeliered ballrooms or on glittering stages. It waits, it watches, and when necessary, it responds.